welcome everybody to the Humans and Intelligent Machines webinar this evening. This event has been hosted by the Confirm Centre as part of the Limerick Lifelong Learning Festival. So my name is Sean.O'Brien. I'm the Education and Public Engagement Manager with Confirm. So I'm going to be hosting the event this evening. But just to give you a bit of an introduction to the centre, we have Professor Conor McCarthy, who's just going to give you an overview of Confirm and a little bit about our education and public engagement strategy. So I'll hand it over to you, Conor, there whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Sean, and welcome to everybody. I'm delighted to open this session today and really look forward to the discussion around humans and intelligent machines. I'm speaking to you here from the Confirm Centre. It's a brand new research facility looking at cyber physical manufacturing systems research and digital supply chain. And what does that mean? Basically, we're looking at the bringing the virtual world into the real world in the manufacturing environment. And what that helps you do, it helps you make better decisions about manufacturing and all the way down to the future of work. So in the future, we'll see a lot of artificial intelligence and a lot of robotic assistance in the factories and in the worker as well. So the future of work will be quite different. It'll be enabled by both physical and virtual attributes like robots and, as I say, artificial intelligence and so on. So delighted to welcome you today. And I'm told that this is the 10th year of the Lifelong Learning Festival. And Confirm has been involved for the last 2 years, and you know, it's a pity. In behind, you can see me here in the image behind me here. You can see what we call our community of practice area. This is a canteen by day, but by night time, it's a 100-seater venue that we want to have discussions with you, the public, and industry and academia around the future of work and smart manufacturing for the region, nationally and internationally as well. So that's an exciting facility we have at our doorstep, and we welcome you there next year, please God, if this pandemic subsides a small bit. A little bit about Confirm Centre. As I say, it's a centre for cyber physical manufacturing systems research and digital supply chain. It involves 55 academics across the country, and you can see some of the participating institutions here. What you see in the map right there is a heat map of the Internet of Everything enabled industry in Ireland, and you can see a very strong focus of those companies along the Atlantic corridor. So we really, in this region and around this region, we have a lot of strong internet and sort of digitally enabled companies, and hence Confirm is sort of located sort of around that sort of general spread. So we're a national centre consisting of 9 academic institutions, and we have many industry partners. We're funded by Science Foundation Ireland, about 25 million euros. And on top of that, then we generate industry funding and non-exchequer funding from Horizon 2020 and so on. We have a strong researcher base, and we have some of the researchers talking today. Is on the line there. I have that right. And also some of the academics in the program are on the call today. So, and Paul joins us as well, formerly from the World Economic Forum. And delighted to have Paul on board. So looking forward to an exciting discussion today. Very quickly, just the objectives of the centre are looking at, it is the research centre, and we're looking at world's leading research in digital manufacturing and future manufacturing technologies. We're looking at talent and engaged public, and that's really part of today's conversation, is to look at how do we embrace the public and other stakeholders around the importance of digital manufacturing for the economy and society. So that's a part of our portfolio. Very much around number 3 there, inclusive and diverse community and practice. That's basically so to help us all. We're on the cusp of, or we are in the middle of the 4th industrial revolution. And that basically means where IT, information technologies, meets manufacturing or operations technology, and there's a convergence there. So we're making smarter decisions in the manufacturing and using IT systems. So that's really educating the public and moving together around our community practice. And the 4th part of our research portfolio is internationalization. So very much this is an international movement, if you like. The 4th industrial revolution is happening globally. It came out of Germany in 2012, and it's growing very much internationally. So part of our growth strategy in Confirm is to look at the international picture. Just in terms of the next slide, please. In terms of lifelong learning, I suppose, you know, if you want to think, before I get into the sort of little bit about the vision for education, public engagement, I think it's really important. I mean, one of the reasons I love research is that every day is different. We learn every day new things about how to, how to do better, make better decisions in manufacturing through our research. And that to me is learning. I'm learning all the time, and I really, really can't stress how joyful that is and how important it is as well. But I think in general, learning and education and sort of knowledge is really like it's fundamental to, to our, I suppose, our being. Like, so, I guess I wrote this down, knowledge underpins our ability to make the right decisions in all aspects of our life, from money to relationships to diet to lifestyle, because knowledge helps us understand the parameters and the boundaries of our decisions. So the more we learn and the more we know, we understand things better, and I think it helps us make better decisions. So that's sort of a high level quote. So a little bit about our education program, public engagement program, what we call EPE. Really what we're trying to do is enhance the perceptions of modern manufacturing and highlight it as a valuable and exciting field of STEM. And next slide, please. So maybe I might ask Sean to talk some of the details on this, but really what we're trying to do is promote manufacturing. We're upskilling and training. We're enhancing public awareness and engagement in the smart manufacturing domain. And we develop and deliver educational programs to enhance our perceptions of STEM and manufacturing. And we want to develop the ability of our researchers. So without further ado, I'd like to thank you all again for coming online today, and we look forward to an exciting event. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks very much, Conor. And just want to flip back here a couple of slides. Just before we do get started on the speaking to the panel, just to go through some housekeeping. At the bottom of your screens, you'll have two options. One of them is Q&A and one of them is chat. So I just ask if you have any questions throughout the discussion, please enter them in the Q&A section as opposed to the chat, as we'll be monitoring the Q&A throughout the webinar, and we'll have time then to answer as many of those questions as we can towards the end of the session. I'm just going to flip back now. Okay. So I'd just like to introduce the panel that we have today. So I suppose, guys, I'll get you to introduce yourselves. You're probably better to do that place than I am. So Tiziana, we might start with you if that's okay.
Okay, very well, thank you. My name is Tiziana Marghe. I'm a professor of science here in, I'm the head of computer science information system, and in Confirm specifically, I am the co-leader of the hub on cyber physical systems, where particularly I'm responsible for the connection between the digital twins and the digital thread. So all the integration, software integration that contains, that encompasses from the machine to the humans, to the communication system, to the software, to the data. Okay. I'm also, which is relevant to the today, a bit more with AI, I'm also the UL director of the Science and Foundation Ireland funded Center of Research and Training in AI.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Tiziana. So Martin, we might go to yourself next, if that's okay.
Fine. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for that. So I'm Martin Hayes. I am head of the Department of Electronic and Computer Engineering here at the University of Limerick. I'm also a funded investigator with Confirm, specifically looking at smart machines and smart machine projects, various spoke interactions with industry companies. So how do we translate our kind of basic research out to companies in the region so that they can get value and benefit from it? And I'm also interested in wireless factories and wireless technology and how it applies to factory technology so that we can make things better, faster and cheaper. So that's what I do.
Great, thanks Martin. So next up we have Begum. If you want to introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Sean. I'm Begum Gench. I'm a postdoctoral researcher working for Confirm at University College Cork. I'm in the data analytics and optimization hub. I'm mostly modeling combinatorial problems, and I'm also interested in trustworthy AI applications. And I'm also serving as the Cork community lead for the initiative called Women in AI Ireland. And in Women in AI, we are trying to reduce the gender gap in AI by increasing the female representation. And I'm delighted to be here today. Thanks, Sean.
Great, thanks very much, Begum. And last but not least, Paul, will come to yourself, please.
Thanks, Sean. My research career began in the Tyndall, and one of my supervisors down there for my PhD was Aidan Quinn, who was a principal investigator at Confirm. So I've sort of come a bit full circle there. After a number of years in research in nanomaterials for electronics, I changed tack to get into science innovation policy, and as Conor mentioned, I've spent a few years in the World Economic Forum and involved in their advanced manufacturing initiative. And recently I've come to join the Confirm Centre, where I'm still engaged in a lot of those same topics.
Great. Thanks very much, Paul, and thanks to the panel for introducing yourselves there. So I guess I'll kick off the discussion. So I suppose when we speak about, like, obviously Confirm, our tagline is smart manufacturing. So when we speak about machines being smart or intelligent, I suppose what do we actually mean by that? I mean, like, could there be a situation eventually where machines are so intelligent they could be comparable to a human, for example? So again, we might start with Tiziana for that one, if that's okay, please.
We start with the, right?
Yes, please.
So the machines that we Confirm, they are mostly industrial. They are robots. They are not the kind of robots that place all or the sensor feel or place or so. It's more the robots that are manufacturing or robot machines able to co-work together with humans. So there is a collaboration aspect there. And so the intelligence and the smartness in that level, so to say, is confined to some degrees of adaptability, of thinking in terms of reasoning about the changing situations. Just imagine a human that is passing next to a robot that is in motion, and the robot detects it and stops. Okay, so it's more a reactive capability than what you can imagine in a sort of a bionical human of the future that is sentient and thinks and is creative and so on. Actually, the most important characteristic is probably reliability and predictability. So if you have AI there, it is basically an AI that is embedded into those systems in order to make them actually behave as foreseen, right?
Okay.
Data driven.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Martin, we might come to you next on that same question, if that's okay. Oh, sorry, Martin, you're on mute there, actually, I think.
I'll just unmute there so that I wasn't echoing in the background. Yeah, so thanks. Smart. Interesting question, right? So what does smart mean, right? That's the, I suppose that's the more important question here, right? In so much as the computers will always be very good at doing things really, really quickly. So they'll be able to do lots of calculations really quickly. They'll be able to play chess well. They'll be able to do simple tasks repetitively, reliably, really, really well. The question about intelligence and smart goes towards something a little bit more ingrained and a little bit more deep. And there is a number of schools of thought as to kind of, what does that actually mean, right? In terms of where the intelligence will finish or where it will start, or, how human it will get or how human it won't get. So I think that's still very much an open question, right? What you can be sure is that, yes, reliability, being able to do things in really small geometries, being able to do things repetitively, really, really quickly. Yeah, machines will get smart at doing that, and they'll get smarter at doing that. But I suppose the interesting question is sometimes when it's not just do it quickly, that's when we have to ask the question, can computers do it better, or do they still need guidance by humans? And I would contend that they probably will.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thanks. Begum, would you like to give any input on that particular question?
Yeah, of course. As Tiziana and Martin already said, the intelligence is really hard. It's a very hard term to define. But in general, if we take this, the purpose of building intelligent machines is to mimic human intelligence, such that the machine uses some sort of knowledge, which we call data, to make some sort of decisions. And in my opinion, a machine is considered to be more smart or more intelligent than the other one if it takes decisions that are maybe morally and computationally better than the other one under different circumstances. But still, it's not really a real definition, so it's just my perspective. And human intelligence, for instance, it can adapt to different situations very quickly. We can perceive what is happening in the environment much better than when compared to an AI. And I can say that the AI doesn't really scale well to different situations. And for instance, humor. So there's some research that shows that humor is actually linked to intelligence, you know, so they say that it is related to emotional intelligence or it's related to IQ. So if we take this definition as the example, then we know that computers or the AI is very far away from understanding and creating humor. So this is like far, far away. So I will say it depends on the definition, but I don't see AI catching up with human intelligence anytime soon.
Okay, that's a small bit of a relief to hear, I suppose. Paul, would you like to input on that as well?
Okay, well, just to follow up on
Yeah.
what colleagues have said there, I mean, AI is much more, machine intelligence is much more than simply automation, performing as a human is programmed to. It's about devices that can perceive their environment and interact intelligently with it. To take the conversation to manufacturing and smart machines, where that would be concerned, that would typically mean robots that can learn from their environment and from collaborating with humans. Autonomous vehicles, as in self-driving cars and drones, that would also meet that description.
Okay.
And you would also include microsystems that are often that are termed smart dust, tiny sensors and other devices that can detect things in the environment, such as light, temperature, chemicals, etc. So the physical form of a smart machine, I think, can take many different forms. To go back to the question of AI and I'm going to come to something that Bacon said in a second. AI solutions are being developed along several cognitive modes. So that includes natural language processing, pattern recognition, computer vision, reasoning and optimization. And the idea is to advance the research along those modes with decreasing levels of human involvement. And there are several milestones marking different stages of advancement. So, rules-based inference, which is things like spell and grammar checking, that's already here. The long-term goal is what's termed self-aware unsupervised learning, and that comes back to what Bacon said. That's the stage at which you'd be capable of detecting sarcasm, nuance, articulation, intonation, humor, and that's a long way away. That's decades in the future. I mean, what Martin said about computation, AI can tackle complex problems. Over time it will surpass more human capabilities, but it still has limited abilities. So there are big challenges around complex decision making and speech recognition and a whole host of other tasks. And my suspicion is we're a long way from cracking that, and what's termed general intelligence is a long way off.
Perfect. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. That's very interesting. I suppose what really hit home there, I guess, was what's the definition of something that's intelligent and smart, and that really has to be defined, I suppose, before you can turn something intelligent or smart. And I suppose this brings me on to my next question, and I just wanted to do a quick poll with the audience before I ask this to the panel. So I'm just going to, on your screens, this is to the attendees, you should see a poll in a couple of seconds. So it's to do with robotics, automation, AI, and are they stealing people's jobs, basically. So if you just answer that, I'll get the results here in a couple of seconds and we can move on to the next question. So you should see it there now. I'll just give you a couple of seconds.
Oh, it's unfair, Sean. You haven't allowed hosts and panelists to vote.
Can't vote. Can't
Oh,
vote.
sorry, I didn't realize the panelists could vote.
This is an outrage.
I can't vote either, I promise.
Well, that doesn't make it right.
Say our opinion.
Okay, so we've got quite a few responses in there. So the question I posed, guys, was robotics, automation, and artificial intelligence are stealing people's jobs. The statement I posed, I suppose. So the reason I posted that, my next question is to do with one of the Eurobarometer reports that are commissioned by the European Parliament. And basically what they do is they survey public opinion on certain issues. And they did one in 2017. And it revealed, sorry, I'm reading the stats here off a sheet, that 72% of those surveys agreed that robotics, automation, and AI were stealing people's jobs. I suppose the results here from our survey, we have 43% agreeing or strongly agreeing that yes, they are, with 43% also actually totally disagreeing. So I suppose my question to the panel is, do you feel that this fear, I suppose, that people have about these technologies is grounded, or do you feel like it's a complete misconception? So, Martin, we might start with you for that one, please.
Okay. So clearly everybody in the audience has to kind of view my answer through the prism that I'm head of an engineering department and want people to do engineering and think engineering is a good thing, right? So you may think that, you know, he would say that, wouldn't he, in relation to kind of my response that's coming here, but absolutely not. No, it's absolutely going to, there hasn't been a technological revolution thus far that hasn't created lots of extra new jobs, right? Lots of extra. I mean, in the basic, there's a lot of jobs that humans don't want to do, right? And shouldn't do because they're hazardous. This means, you know, working in, you know, deep underwater, working at really low geometries, microsurgeries, things like that. Humans aren't very good at doing those things and probably shouldn't be doing. Picking rubbish, sorting your rubbish out, all that kind of stuff. You wouldn't want the job anyway, even if you were offered it, right? So there are lots of stuff like that where machines are best put to actually solve it. And I would say that at a deeper level in terms of, you know, improving the services that are on offer to mankind, to the culture, to the society, and whatever. I mean, machines can help there. I mean, I always take, for example, you consider the bus that brings people from Colbert Station to Shannon Airport, right? And it goes twice a day. And basically people say, well, you know, I can't get out to Shannon Airport, therefore I won't go to Shannon Airport, therefore I'll drive to Dublin instead. If you had an autonomous bus that was bringing you out, you know, on the hour, every hour, 24 hours a day, never got tired, never had to take holidays or whatever, you'd still have the same amount of people, in fact, more people kind of managing the bus system and also maintaining that the bus was safe and things like that. So therefore you'd have a better service, a better contribution to society, and actually more people would be employed in the whole service. So I think in general, if you think in terms of scaling opportunities like that, that's what's going to happen, right? There's going to be more opportunities for more people. It just needs people to have the skills that they can apply.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Martin. Very interesting response there. So next up we have Begum. Would you like to give some input on that?
I mostly agree with Martin, what Martin is saying. I think
Mostly
this stealing jobs is a total misconception, because at the same time, like most of the AI applications, and especially if you are trying to design them in a responsible way, there are some design mechanisms. For instance, there's human in the loop or there's human on the loop. So sometimes you need a human interaction to make a decision, or you need some human to just monitor what the AI is doing, and if there's anything wrong, then the human is interacting with the system. So the human is actually not outside of this AI application, but actually inside it. So this is not like stealing the job, it's taking some part of the job of the human, like the heavy duty job or the exhaustive part of it or the dirty jobs. It's just taking that part, and it is allowing the human to use their intelligence or use their physical work on some other part. And I think there are like hundreds or thousands of open and interesting questions out there, or interesting other jobs that the society hasn't really focused on. So it's not like humans are going to be without jobs. It's just the way that I see it in short is that AI is not stealing jobs, but it has the ability to share some of the time-consuming jobs with the human, and also shifting some of the work into a different form. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Excuse me. Paul, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, the phrase Industry 4.0 comes from this being the fourth occasion industry has been transformed by a wave of technological innovation. And as Martin said, anxieties have accompanied every previous wave of technological development. The term Luddite, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, it comes from an organization of English textile workers who destroyed textile machinery as a form of protest during the first industrial revolution, because they were afraid that their skills, the skills of their craft would go to waste. The Luddite movement was suppressed forcefully, and I think the point to take from that back to today, that there's not robots and AI coming after people's jobs, it's management coming after people's jobs. Technology isn't deterministic in the sense that there's an inevitability about the way it evolves. It's shaped by the people who work on it and the people who commission and pay for it. I think it's also important to say what technology is doing at the moment. It's more accurate to say that it is tasks rather than whole jobs that are being automated. So the effect of that is that it might reduce the personnel needed in certain roles. So if you let's say, to take that further, if you take the full set of activities that a firm operating in a specific industry performs in order to develop a product for the market. It's observed that technology is having different impacts in different parts across the value chain. So there might be a squeeze taking place in some parts that are more amenable to automation, but then there's expansion in other parts. Martin there had an analogy about the bus. I've heard an analogy about a bridge, or building a bridge. So nowadays, there are far more steps involved. There's more design and simulation. You might have a miniature 3D construction made beforehand. So while you might have fewer people on site carrying out the actual physical construction, you might actually have more people involved in the overall process. I think one of the things that is different now, and maybe why it explains part of the media coverage of this issue, is that white-collar jobs such as legal, finance, and accounting that were previously immune to these kinds of developments, they might not be so protected in future. So in the case of law, there are firms being created that use AI not just to review all rulings, but they're developing contextual intelligence to extract specific detail from those old cases that are relevant to the case in hand. So that these kinds of changes coming, and we don't really fully know what the effects will be or how wide-ranging will be. And there's also variations by industrial sector and variations by geography, and you get clustering effects. So it's very difficult, to make long-term predictions. But I do revert to the position that technology has always been impacting on humans. And I think what we want from technology is to equip humans to make more accurate decisions and not to take away the actual decision itself.
Sorry, I muted myself there. Thanks very much, Paul. That's really, really interesting. And finally, Tiziana, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, so I mean, maybe just from my own experience, I mean, I come from Italy, from Torino, where there is Fiat. So it's one of the first automotive companies that actually introduced in large scale robots. And I remember when the first intelligent generation of robots was introduced, there were strikes all over the place for months. So they blocked production, and the workers actually were very much against that. Turns out that the jobs that disappeared in that context, they were the ones with varnish, which were extremely dangerous and corrosive. The ones with heavy lifting, which were actually having a lot of accidents, okay, for the people. The ones, some jobs at night, which is a very, difficult shift to run all over time. At the time, it was prohibited in Italy for women to work in the, so the discrimination, different discrimination that could be overcome that way. And so the observation after a while was that there were more high pays open instead of ones. I would like also a little bit in terms of a technical system. So if you see the robot as such, say that's one of the things. If you just at the impacts of software, for instance, in context of our society, the secretary have gone away, the mess gone away. So a lot of professions have been without necessarily being reached by robots or by AI. So we had already this kind of generational changes and kind of adaptation of the system that has also enabled the individual to express themselves and to have a more creative job themselves, okay, instead of relying, let's say, on, relatively substitutable contributions by lower paid workers, okay? So there has been a lot of societal change also in that direction. The jobs that probably are going to stay are the ones in the more creative industries, the ones that actually can be automated in an easier way. They are probably the first ones that are going to have some kind of either collaboration or substitution. But we not forget the fact that there are other opportunities that are actually opening themselves up. And if you just think about the entire economy that is connected with the fact that we have mobile computing or so, just in your case, think about your phones and so on. That's something that, pre-90 something didn't exist. So I think that in terms of sustainability, also society, there are lots of advantage can be reaped if we all together collaborate and use technologies for good cause.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for those great responses. I think what I'm hearing there is that I think these technologies are having more of a, that they might be changing the jobs slightly, rather than literally stealing people's jobs directly from them. There's some great questions coming in the Q&A, guys, as well. Thanks very much. So we'll get to those at the end of the session. So I suppose something Paul said there was about the Luddite movement during the first industrial revolution. I think you said it was, Paul. So I suppose what came to mind when you said that was the recent kind of spate of coverage in the media about the vandalism of 5G masts. So I suppose, like, and a few of you mentioned during your responses about the media also, I guess. So my question is for you guys, I guess, is do you feel that the media have a part to play in like perpetuating this misconception or this feeling towards these types of technologies? So Begum, we might start with you this time, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. I think not exactly the mainstream media, but especially social media has played an enormous negative role especially during this pandemic for the spread of these news, because social media has endless uses and advantages, but it also leaves the door open for negative scenarios. So don't get me wrong, I'm a very active social media user. I love it. But we cannot ignore the main problem in social media, that there is no fact check, or actually there is no initial fact check. So you can just put any kind of news out there and you post it online and people will start reading about it. And one of the main problems in social media as well, it's the bubble situation. I think I like to call it as a bubble, because people, they usually have friends around themselves that are thinking alike. So let's say when you're sharing something, your friends are going to see your post and then they will start sharing similar things. So you kind of get stuck within a bubble. And there was some recent research about that on one of those famous video platforms. They have found out that if you have watched a conspiracy theory video recently, then the platform is very likely to recommend you more conspiracy theory kind of videos. So you end up with something that you think is true because you keep seeing it, you're exposed to it all the time. So what I'm trying to say is that as regular users, we cannot really verify the information unless unless we are an expert or the information is coming from some trusted media outlet. So this is the main problem about it. And I think if mainstream media have acted, for instance, faster throughout the pandemic and stopped this fake news information about this 5G or the other ones, it could have been a better impact.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, it's very interesting about the social media. I recently watched a documentary about this, and you're picking up on a lot of that there. Excellent. Paul, we might go to you next on this question, please. I think you're muted, Paul. There, we can't hear you.
How about now?
Just if you could turn your mic up a small bit higher, if possible.
Okay. Is that any better? No? Struggling?
We might move on, Paul, if that's yeah. We'll move on to the next speaker, and we can come back to you there in a second if that's okay. So Tiziana, would you like to give some input on that, please?
Yes, so I agree completely with Begum, because I mean the technical term for the bubble is basically confirmation bias in a certain sense, right? So you have already a certain predisposition to believe some facts, okay? And then you look into the other facts, into the other news that come up, actually something that is similar, that is aligned to what already you're in, so you can end up in a bubble this way, right? So it's important, of course, that media, or at least official media that are subject to fact checking, so to say, that they give an objective, possibly objective information, okay? And you know, technologies, it is true that technologies per se are on the people what they make out of that. So that's why it is important to have research and to have communication about ethical aspects in the use of technologies. They can use to save life or to save jobs, save the or destroy environment, right? So it means that the discourse have to open to broad more done right. They have of course about data science and the important bias from that basically is inherited by eyes that are trained that data. There are other aspects of AI that role decision making, for instance, use AI algorithms to suggest or to fill information so that I mean the questions and the field they are as objective possible, and it is all a matter of the useology. So what's seen over the time is that
Oh, I think we may have lost Tiziana there, guys. Sorry. Oh.
Can you hear me again?
Sorry, internet.
Oh, that's okay.
That was a robot. That was a robot. Okay.
The technology could hear you speaking badly about it, Tiziana, and it started fighting back.
Okay, so yeah. So it's basically what we do, and all search and inform of the impact of the other. We do important part of the social combination that is at the center interest of our concern.
Okay, thanks, Tiziana. Paul?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but barely, I think, from my end anyway.
Will I try and speak loudly? Is that helping?
Oh, that's better now, yeah.
Okay.
Don't strain your voice, though.
I'll try not to. Okay. There was an astronomer and planetary scientist back in the day called Carl Sagan, who was famous as a science communicator. And he believed in explaining apparently difficult concepts in science to the public, and that it could be done effectively. But it needs continuous engagement and a commitment to doing it well. Now, some parts of the media do science very well, but my observation is that too many of them are complicit in making science seem remote and difficult, that it's too hard to, too much effort to engage properly. There are cultural reasons for it. I actually feel that the public sometimes is content to cast people in science as being a breed apart. You know, a lot of people enjoy the mystique of thinking that science is unknowable to all but the initiator or the very smart. And you've got the stereotype of the lone genius, the obsession with the gods of Silicon Valley. You know, those people are very happy to be thought of as singular individuals. And the media, a lot of the media like those simplistic, outmoded narratives. So overall, the media not only don't engage properly with the science, they don't relate the way innovation actually works, which is collaborative and distributed and very human. So I think when you have this shoddy approach to science and innovation, I think it makes conspiracy theory easier and more attractive to peddle. And there's a big challenge here for scientists and for policymakers in communicating with the public. You know, conspiracy theories around 5G masks and COVID-19, they're not simply a product of the internet age and social media, although they can have amplification effects. But, you know, if you look at anti-vaxxers, they've been around a long time. Climate change denial goes back 30 or 40 years. You know, there've been conflicts around GM food since the mid-90s when it became commercial. And I think scientists can often be taken aback when the objectivity of their work is questioned. You know, they're not often prepared for the vested interests that stalk the public landscape and muddy the waters. And maybe that should be part of the training, you know, for people when it comes to communicating science. You know, the final thing I'll say, I'll mention Carl Sagan again. He also once said that once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. And I think too many of the media have indulged charlatans, whether it's for commercial or ideological reasons or for so-called, you know, balance and impartiality. And that's why public engagement work of the kind that you do, Sean, is very important, because you know, there need to be more actors putting in that effort to properly and accurately engage the public, whose attention span can be very short, unfortunately.
Thanks for that plug there, Paul. I appreciate it. Martin, we move on to you as well for that same question, please.
Thanks, Sean. I think you're doing a great job as well, by the way. I wanted to say it. You know,
I feel my head swelling.
Yeah. So a couple of things, right, to say on this, and it's very important actually, bearing in mind, you know, events that take place, you know, and what passed for a debate last night, right? You know, if we're not guided by science here, then all of a sudden, you know, people can start, you know, telling you to drink bleach, and it's like, okay, you know, if we're not guided by science, then where are we going, right? And so I like to think, particularly when it comes to, and the specific question was in relation to 5G, and it actually does feed back to what we're doing in Confirm, because we have a 5G test center where a major plank of what we're doing is trying to prove that wireless factories can work safely for the good of the citizen, but also for the good of the company moving forward, without any necessary danger to public health or whatever. And you know, it's too easy in this, you know, social media bubble that we're in for people to kind of, you know, throw out stuff. Like I saw, you know, various people drive past a mobile phone mast, like with some kind of, like, I don't know, handheld meter, right, and say, look how dangerous this is just going to kill me, you know. And like, you know, like who knows, they might be catching a radio signal, you know what I mean? It's like, I have this thing, you know, if you sat close enough to a light bulb for long enough, you know, you'd get cancer in your neck, right? If you sat close enough with a light bulb next to your neck, you'd probably develop cancerous tissue in your neck if you sat for long enough, right? But nobody's going to sit in the dark for the rest of their lives, right? People actually do trust that that light bulb up there is going to be okay, right? And this is what science tells us, because, you know, radiation is proportional to 1 over d to the power of 4, where d is distance, right? So, you know, the further you go away from the source, the better it will be. And so that simple questions like that, which can be solved by science and which can be addressed by science, I take Paul's point. You know, it sometimes takes a bit of work to actually, you know, sift through this, and it can't actually be reduced to 140 characters in a tweet, and, you know, and Gemma Doherty telling us that we're all going to die because of it. You know what I mean? So it actually does behove the citizen to actually go out, to learn, to inform themselves, and actually to get outside the bubble. I like this notion that's been proposed at the minute that, you know, for every, you know, left-wing argument that you kind of list in your social media feed, you also have to have a right-wing argument, so that therefore you can make a balance, right? And use blockchain or something like that in order to guarantee that, right? So that you aren't just listening to Breitbart or Fox News or whatever, or MSNBC or the New York Times, you know what I mean? Yeah. That there's a balance, and that requires work, it requires effort. And so we, as scientists, and I think Paul will echo this, you know, we call on people just, you know, not to be lazy, right?
Excellent. That's great. Guys, thanks very much for those great responses to that as well. I think as well, I think some of your comments there really kind of, it's a good time to talk about the Lifelong Learning Festival. And I suppose part of the work that the Lifelong Learning Festival does is to get people having these conversations and thinking about these kind of things from the point of view of experts such as yourselves. So thanks so much for being here tonight. Now, before I let you go, I have one more question. I suppose I've kind of focused on some of the more like negative kind of conspiracy aspects or the negative public perceptions of science during this whole conversation, which I didn't necessarily mean to do. But I suppose in a more positive note, in terms of the usefulness of this technology and again, I don't want to start a whole conversation here around COVID-19 and the pandemic, but I suppose what would you can you maybe see some usefulness, or could you describe some useful some areas in such pandemics where these types of technologies such as AI, automation, robotics, etc., would be useful? So is there we'll say a positive for society? Is there a definite positive for society coming out of them, given the current situation globally? So Tiziana, we might go to you first for that one, if that's okay.
Okay, so I'll try.
Sorry, it's a long question.
Well, the typical parameters for the impact of automation in general, okay, that's it's AI, it's robots, it's automation in general, so to say, have always been two. One is quality, predictable quality, okay, and the second is the price point, so the cost. So a lot of things have been made affordable to everybody because we were able, after adding automation and adding knowledge and refining the process and adding supply chains and all these other networks that are connecting the manufacturing environment from the raw product, from the raw sources, so to say, materials to the products. Basically, it means that we can have a lot of things that are very complex engineering objects, artifacts, at a very predictable, high quality, at a low price point. And the first thing that I can imagine, just imagine the time of the COVID. Imagine creating one by one, lab, millions, hundreds of millions, billions, okay, for the entire nation. you do that? Even the knowledge would not be enough if you were not be able to price point is actionable for every. So I think that's going to be one central point, having automation in the factory, for instance, really allows her to profit from in a very time, so to say, from innovating our life saving.
Okay, thanks, Susanna. Sorry, we lost you a small bit there towards the end. So if we have time at the end, we might just come back there. So Martin, we might go to you for that question next, if that's okay.
Yeah. So listen, particularly COVID has been a real example of where technology can help. I mean, why did South Korea do so well during, this pandemic, relatively speaking, in terms of proper tracking and tracing, proper mitigation of the effects of the virus, and an increase in public health? It was through the use of technology. Now, you could argue that the citizenry in South Korea were prepared to sacrifice some of their civil liberties in order to be able to pay that price. However, there is a case here that the state has a responsibility to keep its citizens safe, and if you have to lose some civil liberties in order to do this, then I personally, and it's a personal view, that I feel that's a price worth paying, right? But we move on. I mean, in terms of vaccine design, simulation, in terms of the effects associated with just even modeling kind of ventilation systems and the effect of ventilation on patients, and how digital twins can help that. Technology pervades the treatment, analysis, mitigation of COVID-19. And I have to say, whatever else you say about the speed at which a vaccine is being developed, it's in no small measure due to the use of technology. And it has to be said that this vaccine will probably be available for mass consumption quicker than ever before. And that, I think, is a good thing on balance, right? Again, on balance, in the round, okay?
Great. Thanks, Martin. So Begum, we might come to you next for that, please.
Yeah, so for the positive impacts of COVID, so what did COVID brought, what did it bring into our lives in a positive way? When I think about it from the research point of view, for instance, well, you know that we build our models based on data. So there has been a couple of epidemics in the past, but there was not really enough data we collected from them in the technological era. So there was not really too many things that we thought from the technological perspective. For instance, we never really thought of contact tracing applications before. We never really thought about their ethical implications and their design issues, or those models. Well, I know that there has been some existing models for modeling these epidemics and those kinds of things, but now that we have more data and we have better understanding of what is actually happening and how we can model them better, and what was good, what was not good. And I think for future, if we see any global issues in future, we will be more prepared for them now. I think these are the main positive sides of it. And some of the applications due to COVID now, they have been rushed. For instance, now we are looking into options of having virtual doctor-patient diagnosis tools. So we are now thinking about them. Or well, there are loads of problems around this about privacy, but we are thinking about them now. Or we are trying to automate most of the jobs. We are trying to make people work from home to, I don't know, there are so many opportunities that come along with it from a technological perspective. I think these are all good questions that the COVID has opened for us for future.
Great. Thanks very much, Begum. Thank you. And finally, Paul, please.
Okay, I hope you can still hear me okay.
Yeah,
there was an American futurist called Ray Amara who had an adage about forecasting the effects of technology, and it's called Amara's Law. And it states, we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and overestimate the effect in the long run. And that might apply to some of the things that we've been talking about tonight. But I do think that change will inexorably come one way or another, because the possibilities allowed by digital technologies are going to be irresistible. I think technological abundance is a key element to surmounting both the challenges of the age and to realizing the good life, which is what it's for. To give one example, at Confirm, we've just started a project on improving supply chain resilience in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what we're trying to do is to create a tool, that can be used by companies, government procurement departments to sense incoming disruption, so they can improve their supply chain planning, reduce bottlenecks, improve port utilization and so on. And what we're hoping that this tool will do will not just, in the short term, help with coming out of the pandemic, but also to just, embed, resilience and make people better able to prepare strategies and action plans, for other future economic and environmental disruptions. But technology, I have, very wide-ranging virtuous impacts, beyond that. I think, manufacturing will increasingly be required to limit its carbon footprint, and technology will be fundamental to achieving that objective. The model of the factory is going to evolve in the coming decades, and it's going to enable a broader reimagining of the design of urban space, and it will promote, that will promote visions of urban life in the coming decades that emphasize quality of life and ecological soundness. Advanced manufacturing technologies could improve the nature of work, advancing both health and human welfare, and more adaptable modes of work could be realized for people in a variety of circumstances, as we're having to do now. So, and technology underpins all of that. But I think for technologies to be of maximum benefit to society, I think the dialogue between technologists and the public is really important, in the development of these technologies. And that's where the importance of policy is apparent as well, along with incentive structures around the development and rollout of technologies. Technology seems to have got a bad reputation in some quarters for being used in a way that enslaves people. But, all my career, anyone I know who has ever worked on any innovative process has sincerely been motivated by trying to liberate people. And that's why structures for continuous dialogue and engagement with the public, are so important. And I'm going to plug you again, Sean. It's why it's such an important part of Confirm.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks everybody for everybody in the panel for those amazing insights into some of the issues we covered. So there's been a load of questions coming through on the Q&A. I noticed that we only have about 5 minutes left, and I know one of the panel have been answering them already. So I might just get to a couple of them here. So the first one I have here is, does the growth of robotics, let me rephrase that again. So I think we might have covered this more or less, but if anyone has anything else they'd like to add on the panel to this. So this question is about how the growth of robotics and AI is influenced by the pandemic. So I think, Begum, you referred to that quite a bit in your response.
Yeah, I think we covered it a little bit.
Yeah.
So there are loads of robotics and AI opportunities that are coming up.
Yeah.
I don't know what extra to add to it.
No, I think you covered it perfectly. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So there's another one here. Sorry, I'm just reading them here as I'm trying to read them to the panel. Oh yeah, okay. So as manufacturing in Ireland comes under more and more threats from, we'll say, Asian and Eastern European-based manufacturing, what would be the main smart manufacturing technology that the panel members would recommend, which would maximise sustainability of manufacturing in Ireland? I hope I got that question correctly because I was skim reading it. So if anyone would like to input on that, Conor, you're more than welcome to pop in there as well if you like.
I suppose I can maybe try that. So there is there's demonstrable use cases. For example, mass customization. What does that mean? It means we want products now that are customized to ourselves and our tastes and our size and so on. And that's helping reshoring of manufacturing back to Europe. An example, case in point, Adidas Speed Factory. The business model there was based around the customer wanting to go on their iPhone, designing their shoe, and pressing send, and they pay the money, and then a day later or so the shoe arrives at their house. So the business model there was no longer does the customer want to go into a store and pick from 6 different varieties with 6 different sizes in each variety, so 36 combinations. They want their own shoe designed to their own taste, and they want it the next day, and they don't mind to Germany because they wanted to be able to get, for the supply chain reason, produce a shoe with a robot that was able to produce a shoe for me and then a shoe for you, and they're both different. Every time the part came off the production line, it was different part, and was tagged to me or you, and you need to deliver that the next day, so you need close to the customer. So a lot of movement around customized products, and that's very local, because what we like here in the Midwest, or we like in Ireland, doesn't necessarily apply to the UK or north of France. Is different styles and varying. So we're going to see, I think, a lot more localization of production. Back to the old cottage industries, really, it's going that way. So in the future, I think that will enable us to reshore manufacturing, and it's down to personalized products.
Great, thanks very much. So guys, sorry Martin, go right ahead.
Just to back that up, it's important for everybody to note that this is official EU policy to onshore and reshore those. Let's be honest about it. Sweatshop manufacturing jobs. That's to be honest. Cheap fashion, cheap footwear, all that type of stuff that really has been Europe and the developed world, the first world's grubby little secret for the last 10 or 15 years. That basically we're wearing, really nice sneakers and really nice clothes that have basically been made in pretty questionable circumstances in the developing world. And actually, if we reshore some of those manufacturing tasks back to Europe, it's actually the ethical thing to do. And actually, an ethical AI policy is the benchmark of the Horizon 2020 kind of funding mechanisms for artificial intelligence, which we basically get our research grants from. So we're, encouraged by Europe all the time to think ethically in terms of our application of technology and the application of AI to what we try to do.
Great. Thanks so much. So guys, I'm just conscious of time here. So we have quite a number of questions. I know some of the panelists have been answering them live during the conversation, in the Q&A section, I mean. But what I might do, just in the interest of time, is I'll download those questions, and there's a recording made of this webinar. So we'll post some, if the panel want to give additional responses to those questions, we'll post them along with the video on our website. And I'll be sharing a link to anyone who registered for the I'll be sharing a link to that with everyone who registered for the event, excuse me. So just before we finish up, I will also be sending out a feedback form. So we'd really appreciate your feedback on how you thought the event went. So I'll be sending that along with the other information. And finally, I'd like to thank all of our panelists, thank all of you guys for attending. And I'll just leave you here with some of our social media accounts. We post all of our upcoming events on these channels here and on our website. So if you wish to attend further events, please do keep an eye on those. So thanks again to everybody. I hope you enjoyed the evening. And
so just to say, Sean,
sorry, Conor.
just to thank you as well, Sean, for doing an excellent job.
So,
I, for one, really enjoyed the debate. It was really, really interesting, and I think some really good ideas there. So well done to you all on behalf of Confirm Centre. I want to thank you, Sean, for organising and driving this. And just from my behalf, I want to leave you just with a quote from Patricia Flusi, from the CTO of Dell, and she gave a very interesting talk about a year ago, and she said the whole idea of the jobs, and we talked about that earlier on, but she basically said humans have been doing the jobs of robots while robots were getting ready and good enough to do those jobs. So her premise was that those jobs should always have been done by robots, but robots weren't ready until now to do them. So an interesting point of view. So yeah, thank you. And